So now it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers. First of all, I would like to welcome Mr. Francois Masquelier, who is the chairman of the EACT, the European Association for Corporate Treasurers, and also Mr. Enno-Burhard Weitzel, who is from Surecomp, and he is the mastermind behind organizing this event. And let's do not forget, I also extend a special welcome to Mr. Alexandros Kodiavras, the president of the Greek Treasury Club, and also the driving force behind the Open Treasury initiative. Now, it has been working for 2 years. So, without further ado, let's dive into today's topic. And Francois, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Alexandros, for the invitation. I'm pleased as chair of the European Association of Corporate Treasurers to participate to this, let's say, Open Treasury session. I think indeed it's a very interesting topic, especially in the current context. And we will try together with Enno-Burhard Weitzel from Surecomp, is Chief Solution Officer, but I will ask him to introduce later. I think it's a good topic, and we thought about that topic because we realized that this context is particularly difficult. So when you think about it, the pandemic, the subsequent supply chain shortages, if you remember, and the escalation of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, for example, but flown by the war in Gaza, and more recently Lebanon, I've refocused the attention on supply chain resilience. And today it's a commonplace to get it comment like just in case in the logistic and the supply chain management. But the globalization followed by a certain degrees of a deglobalization have completely changed the rules. And I think that this context it's quite important for us with a lot of pressure on the margins. So this whole concept of supply chain management has more into focus on how to be resilient and the capacity to mitigate disruption and significantly limit the impact also that could occur, as well as related risks and costs, because you know that we as corporate treasurers are supposed to mitigate the risk, but also to be efficient and to reduce the cost. And time, speed, security, cost, resilience are becoming the key targets for corporate treasurers in many fields, but more specifically today in the finance supply chain and trade finance. And we want to be more efficient, really, that's the motto of a lot of our peers. So how could we secure further this specific part of treasury, especially when it comes to the, let's say, external trading with different cross-border, let's say, activities. And I know that in the CE countries and in Greece, it's also more and more you have export, and so you need to deal with other countries. So that's the idea and the purpose of today's presentation. And as you know, it's always important to centralize the operation, to automate the operation, because the best answers or responses to the crisis. So, but good news, there are solutions to streamline and to automate processes. And today we will talk with our speaker about a few issues to try also to give you some insightful information, takeaways, and also case studies. So it's my pleasure to welcome Enno-Burhard Weitzel from Surecomp. Welcome, Enno.
Well, thank you very much for being here. It's a pleasure joining this forum, and I'm very much looking forward to engaging with you.
Okay, so maybe before starting, could you just briefly explain your role at Surecomp and your background? Maybe then we could also talk about Surecomp. For those who don't know Surecomp, I think a short and brief introduction would be useful.
More than welcome. I'm Enno. I think you can, a short version, call me Enno. And I am responsible for the solutions at Surecomp. So that means all the systems, all the tech, or the applications, however you want to call it, that our customers are using actually need to solve a problem. Now, Francois, you mentioned already the area of interest and task maybe of a corporate treasurer. So there is a lot of room to actually solve things. That's what our systems should do. That's why my role is called Head of Solutions. I'm with Surecomp now for about 4 years, and prior to this, I was heading the trade finance business at Commerzbank globally. So there I was responsible for managing the products, guarantees, letters of credit, collections, and working capital solutions. So the approved payables, the receivables finance, actually making sure that back in the banking role, we were providing the customers with the relevant financial instruments that enable the corporate treasurers to mitigate the risk and at the same time, hopefully, be cost effective. Maybe that as a very brief introduction, and I would try to quickly present a few slides. I won't make this a slideshow, and I would encourage you to make this a very interactive session. But for those of you who don't know Surecomp, we only do trade finance. We're a software company, but we consider ourselves to be trade finance experts and your trade finance partner. Now, when we say trade finance, we actually mean guarantees, letters of credit, collections, working capital finance. So basically all the instruments that enable you to support your business, whatever that business is, with the necessary liquidity or risk covering instruments so that you can keep your business afloat. Surecomp, we do that for the last 35 plus years. We're a privately held company, so no exposure to the stock market or external financing. We are a global company, yet a very small. We consider ourselves to be rather a boutique. We have about 300 employees across the globe. As you can see, we serve customers around the globe. And as every good engineering company, we are very proud that our solutions are recognized in the market, and the market considers ourselves to be leading in the market. You can not only see that from the awards that our solutions are collecting, but equally, let me try to see that laser pointer here. There was an IDC market study that basically was looking at software vendors in the trade finance space, and they were considering like the strategic dimension as well as the capabilities of the solution. And you always want to end up in the corner here, right? And this is us, Surecomp, so we're very proud on this one. We are serving around 250 banks globally. Now, when we say we serve these banks, it is that we provide the back office solution for that bank. So if you pick a bank on that is using our solutions, 100% of their trade finance instruments that they issue, so every single guarantee that, for example, Standard Chartered is issuing globally is running through our solution. And equally, and that shall be the focus of today's session, we serve corporates with trade finance solutions, multinational corporates as well as smaller corporates. We have solutions for each size of them, covering global operations. And maybe stopping with this one, because again, that should only be a very brief introduction. Francois, you mentioned that centralizing treasury operations is the name of the game. Our solutions actually also enable corporates to have decentralized operations, just to state that up front. So we hope to be in a position to cover various aspects of it. Yeah. But yeah, this is a very brief intro.
No, and also to cover different banks, because of course we corporates and multinational companies work with different banks. We don't want to stick to one supplier. It would be ideal, but it's not the reality. So we need to make sure that you cover the scope. You are bank agnostic, and it's why it's important to have partners that could help you across the border and across the world. So very interesting introduction, and I do suggest that we directly start with question for you, Enno. And so maybe the first question: what specific solution or solutions corporate treasurers are looking for to streamline this trade finance operation? What are the major pain points we treasurers or companies or CFOs are facing?
Well, it's a very good question. It's a bit tricky to answer because you are the experts and we're only listening from a supplier perspective. But when we actually talk to our customers, there are, let's say, 5 themes that are recurrent. And they circle around what you already said with the risk management, liquidity management. So it's first and foremost is the cash flow management, right? The cash flow forecasting. Now again, we're trade finance, so we have links to treasury management systems, but of course it is the most dominant aspect that we hear from the treasurers. And given the regional specific uncertainties, you mentioned the war in the region, but equally like risk changes in risk rating in the countries have an impact on the cash flows and the risk that is engaged in these transactions. So this is number one. Then it comes to more trade finance related topics like standardizing the processes, right? The minute you are an organization that is active in more than one country, you are faced with different processes. You may equally have grown as a company through mergers and acquisition, so that in some parts of your organization there is one particular process, and in other parts there may be different processes. So this is one thing, again, of course, to enhance efficiency and reduce the operational risk of managing multiple legal entities with multiple bank accounts, eventually different online portals to request a bank guarantee or letter of credit, which immediately leads us to the bank relationship management. As a treasurer, we always hear, well, it's my job to keep the business afloat in terms of to manage liquidity and have sufficient credit limits in case of need, right? So when the business needs to manage the changes in the supply chains and the global trends like nearshoring or friendshoring, and this is definitely especially the nearshoring activity is something where the CEE region is super active because of the the Western European countries considering nearshoring to be shoring or sourcing in the CEE countries. So if this is what the business is doing, the treasury functions need to make sure that they have sufficient banks that provide liquidity and credit in times of crisis. Now, these different bank relationships need to be managed. This is the key factor that the treasurers that we talk to convey to us. And lastly, it's the exposure management, right? You need to know what exposure you have with the individual counterparts, be it on the supply or on the sell side. And you need to have systems and tools that enable you to manage that. Now, what we do see is a variety in the approach. So centralization, yes, of course, is one, because as the head of treasury, you always want to see everything and you want to be in control, right? And I was once responsible to set up a bank in Brazil, so not exactly CE, but different. And the head of the bank asked me, say, Enno, who should sit next to my office? And he decided to, like, of course, the treasurer needs to sit next to my office because I can't be far off the cash, right? So this is it. However, when it comes to system approach, we do see 3 key trends, right? There are treasurers or companies that go ERP first, right? Everything focuses around the ERP system and all the other systems need to feed into the ERP. If the treasury function has power or is big enough, there may be a dedicated treasury management system and all the, say, ecosystem needs to feed the treasury management system. And yet others follow a best of breed approach where the treasurer or the finance function would choose a variety of systems or solutions, each best in its various domains, right? And the common denominator that we see as a demand when it comes to using such solutions is the openness of the architecture, the openness of the data and how they treat data, because data needs to freely flow within the organizations to enable taking decisions based on up-to-date and accurate data. Because the last thing you want to do is take the decision on yesterday's data when today there was an event that you should consider when taking a decision that will bind capital or liquidity for tomorrow, right? So these is what we see. And now when the treasury, as you said, right, it's liquidity, risk, cost efficiency. Now trade finance, of course, is one aspect, but we equally hear that it's not always number one aspect. But when it comes to trade finance, the demand that we see is that it's a multi-bank system. We've talked about this already. You need to manage multiple bank relationships because you don't want to rely on one, and then you want to get away from managing the various banks through the blue portal and the yellow portal and the red portal and the green portal and so forth, because it's way too cumbersome. And each bank has its own processes, and you as a corporate, you don't want to deal with all that hassle in managing these different portals. And you want that transparency, right? And you want the ability to manage your internal processes. You may have 4i control, 6i control, or you may need to include a certain department within. And this is what we again face as requests when it comes to selecting portals like or solutions like that. Yeah, maybe pausing here because as you feel, I could go on for hours talking about it, but
I imagine, but I understand that as a treasury management system or an ERP is not able to manage this kind of specific document relationship, so you suggest the best of breed approach where you plug a sort of satellite solution to complement the existing, let's say, two backbones, the TMS on one side and the ERP on the other side.
Well, I would say the best answer is always it depends, right? So many ERP systems have a limited functionality to initiate a guarantee. That's what you can do in some of the ERP systems. Well, creating the guarantee based on data of a contract. Now, the contract data is clearly it's prime in the ERP. Then you can initiate a guarantee. So basically, you can fill out a guarantee application form. But then what? You have no control, no visibility of the life cycle of the guarantee. There's typically not a link to the limit that you have arranged with the bank. And so there are clear use cases or value-added packaging to say, well, you can have your ERP system and you can even use the initiation functionality in your ERP system. But then once you want to manage the full life cycle, or you want to have a digital communication with the bank, then there are benefits in adding a dedicated trade finance system to an ERP system. And even when it comes to a TMS, when you say, well, I want to have it in my treasury management system, it'd be interesting to maybe ask around which treasury management systems that are in use actually have a guarantee module or a letter of credit module. It would be interesting if hands could raise for those that actually have a treasury management system with full-blown guarantee functionality.
Yeah, you can use the comment box to comment, but I know that a lot of people, at least in the country I know best and where I'm living, that it's quite limited, and it's why a lot of companies use extra additional tools to manage that. But just in the meanwhile, so just to continue, it's good to be practical and pragmatic. And so could you provide us with some scenarios where the usage of such solution led to enhanced efficiency and cost effectiveness, because both are quite important? Do you have use case, or could you give us some example to be more, let's say, concrete on what are the benefits?
Yes, more than happy. So I prepared 2 use cases, and hopefully you can see them.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first is a logistics company that has global operations and a very lean treasury team. And I mean very, very lean treasury team. It's a handful for managing a global company. They're headquartered in Europe, and they're working with about 10 plus banks. Now, again, each bank with individual form processes and individual signature processes, right? So some banks accepted digital signatures, other were forcing the corporate to have a wet ink process, so printing, signing, scanning, and so forth. There was, say, change in the organization, right? Now and then there's a new person coming to the treasury team or one colleague being promoted, so you need to change the approval level, and that what they reported to us, it's a hassle, right? Whenever you want to change something, you need to change with 7, 8 different banks. It was very, very painful. That to the central treasury team. That company, being global, had about 200 plus controllers globally that were actually engaging with the sales teams to support the sales teams and then applying or starting the guarantee application process, because they produce very sophisticated logistics facilities, and they always need to have a number of guarantees alongside the projects. So these controllers, they initiate the guarantees. However, it's very big ticket, so these controllers may have done 1 or 2 guarantees a year. Now you can assume that if you do a process once or twice a year, you're not an expert in what you do. Well, you do it, but it's not your day-to-day job and you're not expert. So there are many errors. And once the people understood how it worked with that one bank, there was a tendency to use the very same bank next time, irrespective of the commercial conditions of the banks. Now, the banks knew that they always got the business from that unit, and you can imagine what happened to the price for that guarantees, right? Now back to the central treasury team, they needed to manually update their treasury management system because there was no link to the Excel system. So what did they do? They implemented our Revo solution within 6 weeks lead time, and then they had an automated process that provided real-time tracking. So all of a sudden, the head of treasury knew by the click of a button what was his exposure, how many transactions he had, in which country, and so forth. Equally, it provided the local controllers with an intuitive web UI to start the guarantee application process. Now that meant that this process within our system is, you can say it friendly, it's taking the user by the hand and guiding him through the application process. From the head of treasury point of view, it's forcing a complete guarantee application. So there's no more lack of data, there's no more false application, there is no more mistakes.
And it's well framed.
Yeah, well, we always try to position it to say, sorry, I was forgetting to click. I'm carried away talking.
Yeah, to see the current situation.
Yeah, exactly, the current situation, right? And it enabled the central treasury team to reduce the number of banks that they work with and select which bank should actually issue that one particular guarantee based on multiple criteria. So, and the key criteria that they typically apply is the service level that they get from the bank. The service level typically means turnaround time, but equally support for guarantee texts, because we all know that sometimes the counterpart will require a certain guarantee text, and you know which bank is easy to accept such text and which not. The country coverage and the pricing, these are the key dimensions that were relevant for that corporate. And clearly, a digital connection to the treasury management system, right? So now, again, fully automated and connected, the treasurer had accurate data. Now, what was the outcome? So what, right? There was about a 30% reduction in the internal processing time. We all know what 30% efficiency gain means, right? Mm-hmm. If you spread that across so many people that use the system. They had all of a sudden accurate data. Now, let me give you an example of what that means to have accurate data. That company is a 2.5 billion euro revenue company. They do big ticket sales. They found guarantees worth 2-digit million euro that the bank had still marked as active, whereas the corporate thought they were long closed. Now, if the bank marks them as active, they will actually charge you for the utilization. So they saved close to 100,000 euro money that they were paying to the banks in the recent years, because the banks were charging them for the utilization of these limits, but actually they weren't using the limits anymore, right? So by having all of a sudden the migration from their old Excel-based guarantee management list to the platform and asking the banks for an accurate statement and comparing to what they had in their new management system, they were immediately saving money.
And also free some space for the limit of the credit facilities.
Yeah, of course. Well, but this is the hindsight, right? If you reduce the if you have now an accurate data point that you agree upon, this is the actual utilization, you can reduce the agreed limit because you don't need it, right?
Yeah.
And they got better service quality from those banks that were on the platform in terms of faster turnaround time, better support for individual text guarantees, etc. Right, and this is I would say, a very practical and hopefully good use case that triggers some real life connections with you also of what a corporate can experience when moving to a platform like our Revo solution. A second use case, and then I would be interested also to hearing your feedback, is a manufacturing company that, as a very good manufacturing company, right, had a vision, right? They are an engineering company. They have a strong drive to innovation, so they wanted to shape the next generation of guarantee handling to be smarter, faster, more transparent, etc. So maybe a bit of background. It's a global active organization, active in around 50 countries in the world. It's a large organization with 16,500 employees and equally multi-billion euro turnover. They are working with about 20 to 30 banks globally. So they're what they call core banks. And then when it comes to indirect guarantees, we all know, right? Very, very more in total. They have 5 key subsidiaries, right? 1 per global region, you can imagine, with dozens of users in their current. They already had a guarantee management system that they were no longer satisfied with. They have very sophisticated requirements when it comes to support for the product. So of course they do direct outgoing guarantees, they could do indirect guarantees with local issuance, they do incoming guarantees, they do standby LCs, they do parent company guarantees, and also a few letters of credit. So they wanted a system that could cover all. They needed a very accurate and easy to do reporting because it is a stock listed company. So once a quarter, they need to report to the stock market their exposure and their utilization. And that was one of their key requirements. So again, what did we do? They implemented our Revo platform and we went in waves across their global regions. Right? So we started with the headquarter region and then in waves moved to use the platform. Now they have fully migrated all their active and historic deals to it, which is a multi-billion euro portfolio that they now have on the platform. They have fully automated their trade finance operations, right? And even enforced sophisticated internal authorization processes. So depending on the region, depending on the value of the transaction, it's triggering 4, 6, 8, whatever I control approval before they are sending it to the bank. And what also the other corporate said earlier, that if you change the authorization level of a certain party, well, this is no longer necessary to be shared with the bank because the agreement with the bank is once a transaction has come through the platform, you accept it and you just process it, which again is speeding up the whole process, right? As you can imagine, the outcome, the benefit to the company was that now they have that central repository where everyone in the headquarter can see all the transactions. They have this automated processing that they were looking for. And there was significantly, even when coming from a previous system already, they were not on Excel earlier, they had a way easier reporting. They benefited from faster internal turnaround times and again, saving money because they could now compare the fees that were coming from the bank with what they had expected, because the system will allow you to have a fee computation internally so that you know what you're expected to pay, and they were able to digest what the banks are actually charging them, and making sure that there's no differences. They were saving a lot of money from managing their transactions. So I hope this provides some examples of what is feasible these days when you are using modern platforms.
No, it's very interesting because it's practical, and we see the benefit not only for Treasury but also for the other department. You mentioned controlling, and so I think it's great because when Treasury could generate value for others or simplify and ease and smooth the process for others, it's also quite important. And
well, that's what the treasurers that we're talking to always tell us, right? There's hardly a company that is for Treasury. Treasury is a serving unit within the company, right?
Exactly.
Treasury is serving the business. So ultimately, if a trade finance team within the Treasury team, or the trade finance transactions within the Treasury transactions, need to serve a purpose. And so that's the approach that we take, right? That you need, and that's why I also said you need to make sure that data can flow, because it's not, the value is not in having the data in one system. The value is in working with the data across the processes, across the system.
No, you're right. We are, in general, a service center. It's a good way to enhance, to improve the service we are rendering for different departments and affiliates across the world. But so coming to the next question, how does such solution ensure its alignment with an ever-evolving trade finance landscape, specifically in supporting the digital transformation of different size industries of corporates? So it's an important question.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I guess we all agree there is a flurry of activities out there in terms of digital transformation, and it's hard to keep track with what is going on. So I would say if a treasury team is considering to choose a platform, my recommendation would clearly be to choose a platform that is SaaS. Why? Because let the vendor manage the platform. You want to enjoy the services, right? And it should be a vendor that is committed to continuously invest in that solution. So there are different vendors out in the market, and some have that, say, broad approach. They promise to do everything. Now, we are a trade finance pure player, so we promise to focus on trade finance and trade finance only. So I could even say I have no clue about the treasury management and I don't care for cash. I do, but we don't provide cash solutions. We just focus on trade. Now, on the innovation, let's, for example, take the ICC Guarantee API. I don't know if you have heard, so maybe quickly, SWIFT and ICC have now promoted a new API standard for the guarantee. So if you had a system on-prem or installed at your own premises, you would now have to consider, do I do that? Do I invest in that ICC API, and what's the benefit, and what's now with a SaaS solution or with our solution, you don't need to care, right? Because we're building this on the outside of our solution, which makes it easier for banks to digitally connect to a system like that. And every user of the platform can now benefit from it. And so this is one dimension only, but another dimension could be the digital documents, because you mentioned digital transformation, right? Many countries across Europe have adopted the MILITA, right? So that model law on electronic transferable records, which ultimately says whether you use paper or a digital instrument is equivalent in court. Same thing, right? Let the vendor do all these investments, and you as a corporate treasurer, you just want to enjoy the benefits of that. And so this is how, if I was a treasurer, I would look at these solutions, right? If there is a strong vendor behind such SaaS platform, then you can master these digital transformations. Now, is that fit for purpose only for the very large corporates? And I was giving examples of globally active corporates, or also for the small ones. And I would argue, well, these SaaS platforms nowadays typically come in subscription packages, right? Like t-shirt size, small, medium, large, whatever they are called. And if a platform provider offers these different subscription packages, but then I would argue it's even applicable for small, even very small organizations to use a platform like this, because you can basically grow as you go, right? You can start with a very small plan, and then if you see that, oh no, I need sophisticated features like limit management, or that BI reporting, or that rule engine that allows flexible internal authorization mechanisms, but then typically you can choose other options or migrate to higher plans. So if you follow this type of approach, then I would argue it's the right thing to select a platform, and you can trust that tomorrow's innovation will be on the platform, and that it's also applicable for smaller or regional organizations, if that answers the question, right?
Yeah, no, clearly, again, it depends on the volume, because if you have just a couple of guarantees, so maybe it will be a different story, but in case you have a certain number, I think for tracking, for the, let's say, audit trails, to know the flows, to have the control, I think it's quite good, because it will force all the controllers, the users, the affiliates, to follow a certain process. So in terms of framing and, let's say, scoping the processes in terms of procedure, it's much better to have a solution than to do that on Excel or with various processes and having mails exchange, etc. You need to make sure that the guarantee will be issued as soon as possible. But I'm conscious of the time.
Maybe just sorry.
Go
small
ahead.
one on that one. Again, I guess we all know, right? Treasury teams, they have a lot of priorities. So the minute a treasury team says, I want to upgrade my skills or my tool sets on guarantees or trade finance, we're not talking 5 guarantees a year. We're typically talking on the perspective of the corporate, a significant engagement in trade finance, right? So when the corporates that we talk to, they never do like less than 100 guarantees a year. Otherwise, you wouldn't reach out and engage, right? Quite frankly.
Okay. But again, as I'm conscious of the time, so maybe a final question. So what could be your takeaways or pieces of advice you would give to our, let's say, audience, to our members and treasurers when they are seeking to embark on a solution, or they are embark on this journey of developing trade finance activities and searching for automation, for simplifying, but also for securing the processes. Any pieces of advice you would recommend?
Well, if you get engage. That's always the just do it. Engage and get your head around what's out there in the market, what is available, because sometimes you may not know, or teams may not be aware that there are fantastic solutions out there that could ease your life in the treasury processes and bring you real value. So engage, reach out. If you do select a platform or a solution, make sure it's SaaS, make sure it's from a committed vendor, and make sure it is truly following an open mindset. And with open mindset, I mean open in terms of embracing innovation, open in terms of having these flexible plans, and open in terms of the architecture of the data, because you want to be able to have your data where you need them. And this openness, I would argue, is key.
No, excellent. So I'm sure that you have potentially questions. So any question from the audience, from the delegates around the call? Don't be shy to raise your hand or to open your mic. No question. Are we that's clear? But maybe one they are thinking about the question. So, what is a key differentiator when we talk about Revo and maybe other, let's say, trade finance web portal? Could you give us some ideas and benefit of your solution?
Well, I think we elaborated a little bit on that. The key benefits, I would say, in engaging in a solution like our Revo platform is truly that it can flexibly adjust to the processes that you have in your individual trade finance departments. It can streamline your processes, make it way more efficient. And typically there's scarcity in resources, right? Typically you're not a 25 people team, but rather a 2 or 3 people team. So you want to make sure that you spend your time efficiently, and having that transparency of managing the instruments, the guarantees, the LCs over the whole life cycle is typically a key advantage of using one multi-bank platform as compared to using the portals that the bank provide.
And you mentioned to have a solid partner to make sure that you will keep developing the solution and also being interfaced with other solutions because we have other systems. So I would like to know if there is any question. I don't know, by the way, if it's possible to address question during via the chat box, or if you want some question.
Good question. I don't know.
Do you see, Alexi or Tamas, Alexander, do you see all the questions coming from the...
Actually,
I was just...
Q&A section can be used.
George, we couldn't hear you very well.
Yeah, I was saying that there is also a Q&A section that can be used for any questions. Or alternatively, the chat box.
Yeah, I think for the moment there are no questions in the Q&A section.
Yeah.
I see Eva raising it.
May I have a question? I was working for, let's say, a few decades on letter of credit and trade finance for a Slovak bank. And I know that letters of credits were not very used in this region. And we had always problems that how to get clients and how they can use it. And we started a few years back with some electronic way of communication with clients. But I wanted to ask you if you have in this region some clients who are using your services. Region meaning yes. This Slovakia, Hungary, Czech Republic.
So the answer is yes, we do have. As I said, the clients that we're using typically are globally, and they have operations across the globe, including the Poland, Slovakia, Czech Republic. So also these treasury teams in these countries use our solutions. And I would not know by heart, to be frank, whether these corporates also use LCs. Our platform supports all of that, so LCs, guarantees, collections, and also so I was talking a lot about guarantees, but also on the LCs, right? We're providing innovations and pushing for that, because you mentioned the electronic channels. Also there we are, for example, connecting to digital bill of lading providers like WaveBL to foster the EBL pledge, because the container industry, container shipping industry, I have to be precise, pledged that they want to go 100% electronic bill of lading by 2030, which is way to go. I think currently we are at 5% globally of all container bill of ladings being digital. We already have a digital integration to platforms like that, so that we can really bring innovation also to those that use letters of credits.
Because I know that very often here it is centralized, because companies are daughter companies, banks are daughter banks, and usually everything is done in the head office of the company, very often for corporate clients. And I just was curious if also some not small, but medium companies could use it, because then they can decide. They are local, but corporates very often are served for letters of credit from abroad. We had always this problem when I was working.
Yes.
That yes, they used a lot of LCs, but they were covered by trade finance office in the mother country.
So this is the nature of the letter of credit beast, because you need this international connectivity to the issuing or the advising bank, depending on where you are. Now, to your question, can the system be used also by, say, mid-sized companies of Czech, Slovakia, etc.? Yes, of course, it can be. We are supporting the selection of the bank irrespective of where the corporate has its headquarters, right? So even if that corporate was working with, say, a big American bank, just to name one across the Atlantic, that would work.
Yeah, and
so there's a great deal of flexibility in the system.
Yeah, and your company you offer some platform how they can communicate together. You are helping the bank to communicate about a letter of guarantees and so on. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So on that system that I was referring to, both the corporate and the bank can log in and basically collaborate and work together on the transaction. In the drafting phase, when you want to agree, okay, what is the conditions of the letter of credit, or what is the text on the guarantee, and then from, okay, now this is final, hit enter, officially request that application, all the way to the issuance, or on the letter of credit, also the document presentation can be through the platform. Yeah.
Because I'm asking, I was working for daughter company, a daughter bank of KBC, and we already in 2007-11 had some connection, some trade finance programs, and we could offer to our clients some communication, some platform.
KBC is using Surecomp back office system. Just
I don't remember the name of them, and it is a long time
I
ago.
Do remember I do remember.
They were quite far by this already at that time, and I know that it was very nice to use it. This is a very useful. I'm just sorry that we don't have so many letters of credits and guarantees as we would like to.
Yes.
Yeah. But indeed, so when you have different banks, it's good for corporates to have not one solution per bank, but one solution covering all the banks. So I don't know if we still have time for questions. If you have any question, if not, maybe in the meantime, you're welcome. So if they want to engage with you or to have a demo, so I guess that they could via Tamas or Alexandros contact you, and get, because if you are interested in knowing better about the system, how it works, I'm sure that you should certainly ask for a bilateral demo of the system, or if you have specific question issue, don't hesitate to contact them via our, let's say, organizer of the Open Treasury sessions. I don't see further question. Do you have any final ones? No? I think it's maybe time to it's time to close the session. So
maybe I just wanted to say yes.
Go ahead.
That it's a very interesting question always to define whether the company has already reached a level of complexity, and I think that our members are now at this level. So they are not using only one bank and only one customer and only one foreign currency and only one product. But when it goes to a certain level, which is already difficult to proceed in Excel, then you are obliged to look for another solution. So was very interesting to hear about this. And as Francois said, yes, we are there if you want to be in contact with our intervenants. And thank you for this interesting approach and interesting discussion.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It was a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and Gregory.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
this session, and so I hope that
Thanks
you
a lot.
enjoy. So I wish you all a good evening, and thanks for having